So I'm very glad to meet some best friends and talk about research. So today I will share my recent research on the cognitive function for older people in China. So the title, as Maria identified, is the trajectory and the transition of cognitive function for older people in China. So firstly, I will give some interpretation of trajectory and transition. So here, the trajectory means it's a continuous trend for the cognitive function for older people. It's a continuous variable, right? And the transition is the changes in the different status. I think it's a discrete variable. It's something like a matrix, right? So if for a person healthy, may change to have the mild cognitive impairment and changed to the moderate, changed to the severe status of cognitive function, then to die. It's the different stage changes between the different stages. So it's a matrix. So they are quite different. That's why I make two concepts in my titles. So why my recent concern is the dementia and the cognitive health for older people is because dementia, I know, is a global challenge, not only for China, but also for Western countries. But in Western countries, a lot of literatures talking about the risk factors of the dementia or cognitive function and the consequence of the dementia or cognitive function. But in China, we still have very few literatures to concern about the dementia issue, and also in our pilot practice of long-term care system in China, we only focus the people has some problem of the physical disability, but exclude the people who have some problem of cognitive impairment. For example, in some local practice, we have the long-term care insurance, but for people with dementia, who we have some a case, the man usually hold a knife to kill the people, only kill the people who are familiar with him, but he failure to the need assessment criteria of the long-term care insurance. So he was denied by the nursing home because the physical is good, but the mental is very bad. The need for dementia care is increasing in these days. So in UK, here is an organization, Alzheimer Disease International. They released annual report in the past 10 years. We call that World Alzheimer Report with the different topics related to the dementia. This year's report is the attitude, and the report in 2015 is the global impact. So from the World Alzheimer Report in 2015, we can see the total number of the people who had dementia is nearly 50 million. So, and this number increased 12 to 13% since 2009, and the number has doubled every 20 years. And I also found the I think it's a correct number. It's similar with my simulation. So the total population with dementia is nearly 10 million in China. That means China has the largest population, nearly taking account of 20% of the total population in all over the world of the people who have the dementia. And after my calculation, it took account about 4.2% of the people over 60 years old, and more than 6% of the people who with the age of 65. Okay, and another trend should be demonstrated that you can see from the bar chart here here is the regional disparity in dementia prevalence. And here in the circle, here are some Europe countries, the Central, the Western, and also the East, and also the North America. The trend is that the dementia declined between 2009 and 2015. So, but in other regions, the numbers still increased and the prevalence increased as well. So the regional disparities might give us some enlightenment whether the prevalence of cognitive function declined or increased. They show the regional disparity characteristics. So here, among the dementia, I think nearly more than half of the people with dementia live in the middle or low-income countries, that means in the developing countries. And the rate increased very quickly. So among the new people who have the dementia, you can see from here, nearly 50% of the total in Asia. Yeah, so it's a big challenge to the developing countries, especially the East Asia, and China is one of the East Asian country. And here is some consequence or risk factors of dementia in the literatures, and some scholars reported a high cost of the dementia care, and globally, the global cost will representing more than 1% of the global GDP, and the higher financial burden for family caregivers. The second one is the difficult to cure, especially for the people at the middle age or at the very later age. We call that advanced dementia. The health expenditure is very, very high, and it's very hard to recover. So the focus comes to the early stage. And also from my project, the non-drug therapy giving to the people who have a mild problem of cognitive function is very efficient in the community. So for some of people, when they come, they don't recognize, don't know who is his son, but after 6 months of intervention, it performed a little bit better. So, okay. So for other literatures, we try to find, so you can see from the previous literatures, they only focus on the risk factors and the consequence, right? But my concern is what's the trajectory, what's the changes as the population aging of the cognitive function. So we refer to the literatures. In the Western countries, some literatures focus on the trajectory, but no transition. So yes, we want to explore the story in China. What's the trajectory of the different cohort older people to performance as a cognitive function? And the other one is that we want to know the transition law of the cognitive function at the different status. So we apply a literature in China from Huang Feng and Wu Chunjie. They use the continuous time homogeneous Markov process to check the changes of the physical disability. So we apply this method to research on the cognitive function because we can't find better methodology. Okay. So here are two research questions. The first one is, what's the trajectory trend of cognitive function for older adults in China? We would like to explore the failing effect. So what is the failing effect? I will talk more about that later. The other one is, I want to identify the impact factors to interpret what kind of factors impact on the failing effect. And the second question is, what are the patterns of transition in cognitive function for older people in China? We will identify some risk factors of this transition and estimate the population size in the next 10 years. That means how many people who are in need of cognitive care, okay? So, okay. The first research is the failing effect test. So what is the failing effect? Do you know? Anybody know the failing effect? Okay, what's the failing effect?
Is it perceptual arousal in IQ?
Yes. And at the beginning, it's the improvement of the IQ for teenagers. In the West, only for the teenagers. And laterly, some scholars apply this failing effect to other population, the whole population, and the older people as well. So we call that failing effect because it's named after James Flynn, who did much to document it and promote awareness of its implication. So failing in 1984, Flynn found a growth of 15 scores of the average IQ test in US. And later, some scholars, yes, also found a similar trend in the different countries. Okay, so I also found only one research in China also tested the teenagers' IQ test and found the failing effect existed for children in China. Only one paper. And here I want to say there are some difference between the concepts of cognitive function or cognition and the intelligence. So they are the different term, right? But they have some overlapping. So it is quite special in the psychological research. Here, I gave a conceptualization to define the cognitive function as the intelligence that meets the daily needs of adults. So here I use the cognition to represent the intelligence. Okay. So what theories can interpret the failing effect? I think there are two theories. One is from biological theory, and the other is from the environmental theory, and the third one is mixed both. So for the social science here, our research focused on the environmental theory. So under the environmental theory, we have three hypotheses. The first one is the hypothesis of improved education, especially after the compulsory education in the industrialized society. So will significantly increase the cognition or the intelligence. The second one is the hypothesis of environmental stimulus. For example, the universal audiovisual media system and also the working environment, the improved working environment. Okay, and the third hypothesis is the family size shrunk. That means the number of children decreased, and for each child, they have a higher opportunity to access to a better education. Okay, so in our research, we will test these three hypotheses. And the data, I think the scholars in the aging research in China will be very familiar with this data of CLHLS. This data, it is surveys started in the 1998, so it's already 20 years. We have totally 7 waves, but here we only include the later 5 waves, because in the wave 1 and wave 2, this survey only included in the older people over 100 years old. So I start at 2002, they start to enroll more and more young people. So here, for the data collection, we delete the samples 100 years and over, because for this kinds of samples, it's not a random sampling, nearly a census, right? But for the age range between 65 to 99, it's a random sampling. So, and we also construct some comparative groups. It's very complicated. Yeah, so we use the MMSE to test the cognitive function. It's quite common both in Western literatures and in China. Okay, so here, in different waves, the sample will be tested, will got the MSE test. But here is, I think it's a data selection bias. Because for MSE, you know, if we do a lot of tests, that means we will be much more familiar with the questions, right? So here, in the 5 waves, for example, the samples in 2002 were tested 1 to 3 times, because they might be tested in 1998, in 2000 and 2002, right? 1 to 3 times. And for the samples selected in 2014, were tested 1 to 7 times, right? So we deleted the samples were tested more than 4 times. So to all the samples only test 1 to 3 times, okay? So to avoid the data selection bias and to weaken the impact of familiarity on the test. And we also deleted the missing data of variables we selected in the models, okay? For the variables, the dependent variables is the MMCE and the different dimensions. For example, the direction, the language capability, and the calculating capability, and the memory. And the dependent variable, according to the theories, is the education, audiovisual media stimulus, and the work environment. And we also have some control variables. For example, the physical disability measured by ADL and IADL, depression, chronic disease, bad nutrition, and habits, including drinking and smoking, social participation, average household income, age, gender, and how many times being married. They are the control variables. Here because we have 7 waves, but in the later analysis, we only use these 5 waves. So here is the pattern, the pattern of samples. If we gave a distribution of the birth year of our samples, that means in each wave, what is the birth year of how many samples in each birth year in each waves? Okay, so on the other side is the age distribution of the samples in each waves. So here it's very strange here, right? A lot of people in the previous 5 waves who are more than 100 years old, but here in 11 and 14, the different trend. That's because the I think the sampling strategy changed. So in the previous 5 waves, so some samples died. We fail to track. They will supplement a substitute. That means the similar or the same age and the very close places in the sampling to give some substitute. But in the later 2 waves, so they didn't do that. So very less high age, but they include much more new samples. So that's why they're quite different. Okay. So here, to test the failing effect in the Western countries' literature, they only did the t-test. So, but here, as this here is some bias of the sampling or the sample selection, because if we talk failing effect is a cohort effect, right? But cohort, you know, one cohort means 10 years. Right? So it will be impacted by the structure between the 10 years. If in the 10 years, the younger people, the sample of younger people more, that means that cognitive test will be higher, right? So that's because 10 years is too long to do comparison. So here, we changed to the 5-year interval. So here, this comparison is that, for example, we will compare the cognitive status for the 65 years old people in 2002, and also the same age, 65, in the 2014. That means we will compare the people who were born in 1937 and in 1949, right? So it's the first comparison, okay? And the second one, we construct the cohort groups. So here the cohort means so the previous one, we use cross-sectional data. And the later one, we merged the data and got the repeat cross-sectional data. That means the samples appear in different waves. We treat it as the different persons, treat it as independent. So here, we got the name, the range, the birth year range from the 1903 to the 1949. So here we compare the adjunct 2 groups. So it's different with previous one is that we expand the interval between the different waves of survey. It's totally 12 years, right? Yeah, but later we compared the adjunct this cohort and this cohort. That means this generation and the next generations. So we selected the data in each cohort, but it's not fair to compare this cohort and this cohort because the age different in each cohort in our samples. So we only selected the compared group with share the similar age, the same age here. So we construct four compared groups. Okay, so I can use this table to show it much more clear. So in group 1 is the birth year and the age. Here, the group 2, the birth year and the age, we selected the samples with the range of 93 to 99 to construct a compared group 1. Am I clear? Okay. Yeah. So I'm sorry I didn't change it into English. It's so complicated to show the process of sample selection. So that means in different group, So in the compared the groups, we have the different sample size. So we didn't narrow down the sample size. Okay, so after the t-test, we can find some results. So in the 4 compared groups, they demonstrated a significant improvement of memory. So among the different dimensions of MMSE, so the memory increased between the younger generation than the older generation. And the total MMSE scores and attention and calculate capability for older people born between the 1940 to 1949. Do you know this year of 1949 is a new China set up, and were significantly higher than those born in 1930 to 1939. Okay, it's the old age. And after doing the t-test, we want to test the theoretical hypothesis. So we selected the model of OB decomposition models. So why we use this model? Because we not only could test the significant variables of significance of independent variables, we also could get the weight. Which one is the most important reason for the cognitive function increase? And here, the Y, the dependent variable, is not the status, it's a difference. The difference between compared groups, right? So we test what's impact on the difference. So, okay. Here is I didn't show the table of the findings. So here is some summarized results of OB models. The significant factors for cognition were better health, easy accessibility to healthcare resources, increased household income, and for the theories we test is the audio visual media stimulus, greater and the improved education. So they are the two significant factors. Here is no work environment. Okay, so among three hypotheses, here are two significant, and the audio-visual media stimulus showed greater effect than that of improved education. So here we can talk more about that, why the universal audio-visual media stimulus will have a greater effect than education. I still have no idea about that results, but we can talk more later. So, and another very significant variable is the depression. So the decline in depression, that means the improvement of psychological well-being will interpret a growth of MMSE scores for those born between 1940 to 1949. Okay, so that's the first research. We tested the trajectory of the our older population. Especially, we identified the existence of the failing effect in older people in China. So that's very good. I think the positive perspective is necessary in the aging society. Okay, so the second research we talk about the transition of cognition. Okay. Here we only used the data in 2011 and 2014. That's because we used the Markov models. So the Markov models, they assume that the status at this time only have some relationship, have related with the last wave, but not the previous one. So I think two wave is enough. Okay. So here is the data analysis structure. So in the previous literatures, they only did the Markov models to explore the changes in the physical disability measured by ADL or IADL. But here they didn't test the risk factors. So in my research, we used the models to test what kind of factors will impact on this transition. Firstly, then we use the marginal effect from the models used to the transition to construct the Markov chain. And after get the transition metric, so we apply that and also employed the census data to give a forecast, a projection, population projection. And we got the population size at the different stage. That means how many people who have the mild cognitive impairment, how many have the moderate impairment. So in the next 10 years. So here is the Markov models. So here we assume the cognitive state transition of elderly person satisfied the continuous time homogeneous Markov process. Okay, it's a hypothesis. So here we use MSE to construct 4 staters. I think it's common in all the literatures, okay? So we construct the metric. The metric from the health to the mild cognitive impairment to the moderate to the severe and to the DICE. Here the DICE is the final status. Can't transfer to the other state. Yeah, so so we construct 5 state spaces. So that means we have to separate the models. One model to test the DICE, the survival is a survival model, DICE or not. We use the binary discrete selection Logit model, okay, DICE. The second is an ordered Logit model to look at the transition between the different status for survival samples, okay. Here is a model. And data and the variables, we only include the 2 waves. And after some tracking, some data selection, so here we have nearly 9,000 samples. And so in the models, I mean, we have to do what kind of risk factors will impact on both the survival or not and the different status of the cognition. So here, dependent variable is the survival or not and the different state at the end of the period of the cognitive function. An independent variable, initial cognitive status in 2011. And the demographic characteristics and the lifestyle, health status, and household factors. Okay, so here is the matrix of the transition. We can see because I have to admit that when we are using the data of CLHLS, that means yes, a lot of samples have oldest old. That means we have to do some weighting. So here, why? Nearly only in 3 years, nearly more than 30% died. Yeah, because the sample a little bit older. Okay, here is the descriptive analysis, and the result of the survival model. Okay, quick conclusion of the survival model. So we can see quite interesting in the gender disparity. So the men already have a disadvantage in survival compared to women, but later we will see the men performed better in during the transition. Okay, for survival men, and the other one is the health. self-report health, chronic disease, initial cognitive status are very significant. And also for lifestyle, exercising and participating in social activities have greater survival advantage, as well as the spouse, with spouse better, okay? And also, we found the education. Education, I think is consistent with previous literatures. Education will impact on the initial status of cognition, but not impact on the changes of the cognition, okay? So this is ordered Logit transition model. So here is the gender disparity. Men performed better resistance to cognitive decline than women. So that's why, because there are more female for older population in all over the world. So the women must be more vulnerable. Okay. And the education here, education can improve the initial cognitive level, but not the change, not impact on the change. And also the lifestyle and the health, self-report health, ADL and ADL will be a very significant variable. So we have another research to talk about the association between physical function and the cognitive function. So in previous our need assessment, we usually sum the cognition MSE scores and the ADL or IADL scores to make an index to test the need assessment of one people. But maybe it's not this kind of relationship, because to refer to some literatures, the cognitive impairment will be earlier than the physical disabled. But it's debate. So we want to test whether cognition is a filter or is a condition of the physical function. But it's another research, okay, not this one. Okay, here we got, after a very complicated transition, we got the annual cognitive state transition matrix. We have to use this matrix to do the projection, okay? So the pattern of cognitive state transition, the pattern of DICE is a gender disparity and age difference. So age difference is also very interesting, except for the as it's increasing. Sorry. Okay, so the correlation between baseline cognitive status and the risk of death is higher in the oldest age. Okay, an elderly person with poor initial cognitive status have a higher probability of death. So I will talk the age difference later. And the gender disparity also showed in the patterns of also showed a pattern of cognitive decline, and here is also an age difference. Okay, age accelerates the decline in cognitive function, and older people with poor initial cognition have a greater probability of developing toward a further deterioration of the cognitive function. Okay, and also the pattern of recover. So yes, they can recover, except death, they can recover, but the probability will decrease. Yes. Okay. So we use the matrix and use the census data to do the projection for male and female separately. Okay, so we got the numbers of elderly who are in need in the different status here. Okay, so here shows the cognitive impairment rate raises as age increase. Okay, and the disparity in the women and the okay. So also, we use the true waves data. We can find the failing effect. This line chart shows the gender difference. So, yeah, one result is that the prevalence of impairment rate decline as well. And another important thing is that for the female, so the female have a greater improvement than men, okay? And a similar trend is especially for the oldest old. As age increase, that means they will have greater improvement in the cognitive function, okay? So, yeah, the overall cognitive status demonstrate a greater improvement for oldest old people, okay? So, yeah, quick conclusion, policy implication. So after our research, we want to encourage the government to reallocate of long-term care resources between physical disabled person and older people with cognitive impairment. So we have to invest more money and resources to look after the dementia people, okay? And the second one is long-term care insurance should cover the older adults with dementia or other serious conditions of cognition, and the early stage intervention is very important, both for policymakers and for practitioners. Okay, the last thing I want to say is the offset negative effects of population aging. Yeah, so as the population aging, yes, it's a challenge, it's a bad thing, but we have to see the opportunity. So as the the society and economic development, the health, the overall health status of our population will increase. So I think this brings some enlightenment or some opportunities for us to have a perspective of active aging or healthy aging. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you.